For years, China perfected the art of the drone swarm. Thousands of cheap, expendable UAVs flooding the sky in coordinated waves, overwhelming defenses through sheer numbers. Beijing showcased these capabilities in massive demonstrations, launching hundreds of drones simultaneously in perfect formation, each one autonomously coordinating with the others. Western analysts warned that the age of expensive fighters and missiles was ending, replaced by swarms so dense they would blot out the sun. The math seemed unbeatable. A $5,000 drone versus a $3 million interceptor missile. Launch 1,000 drones, and even if 90% get shot down, the defender goes bankrupt before the attacker runs out of hardware. Chinese strategists published papers declaring swarm tactics the future of warfare, a revolution that rendered traditional air defense obsolete. State media broadcast footage of endless production lines churning out drones by the thousands, each factory capable of replacing combat losses, faster than any enemy could inflict them. The message was clear: China had industrialized aerial warfare, and no amount of American technology could counter simple mathematics. Then, on a testing range in New Mexico and in live combat zones across the Middle East, a new weapon system proved that all those calculations were based on one fatal assumption. The assumption that shooting down each drone required a missile, the assumption that defense had to be kinetic, the assumption that the laws of economics would always favor the attacker. They were wrong. The U.S. Directed Energy Maneuver Short-Range Air Defense System, better known as DEM-SHORAD, just demonstrated that a single laser could engage an entire swarm without ever running out of ammunition. And the cost per kill was not thousands of dollars. It was about $3. The price of the diesel fuel needed to generate the electricity. How did a technology China dismissed as impractical suddenly make their trillion yuan? Investment in drone swarms looked like the most expensive mistake in modern military history? In 2017, China stunned the world with a demonstration that seemed ripped from science fiction. Over the skies of Guangzhou, 180 drones launched simultaneously, forming intricate patterns and shifting formations with precision that suggested a single controlling intelligence. The swarm spelled out messages, created three-dimensional shapes, and executed maneuvers that would be impossible for human pilots. This was not just a light show, it was a military demonstration disguised as entertainment, a message to every defense planner watching: we can coordinate hundreds of autonomous platforms, and there is nothing you can do to stop us. The technology behind the swarm was sophisticated but deliberately scalable. Each drone cost between $3,000 and $8,000 to manufacture, depending on payload and range. They carried simple autopilots, GPS receivers, and mesh network radios that allowed them to communicate without central control. The swarm operated on distributed algorithms, meaning each drone made decisions based on the behavior of its neighbors. Destroy the command node, and the swarm kept functioning. Shoot down half the drones, and the survivors adapted and continued the mission. Chinese military planners immediately saw the applications. A swarm of 500 drones, each carrying a small explosive charge, could saturate an aircraft carrier's defenses. The ship's close-in weapon systems could engage maybe 20 targets before reloading. The rolling airframe missile launchers held 21 interceptors. Even with perfect accuracy, the math was brutal. The defenders would run out of ammunition long before the swarm was depleted. Whatever got through would strike the flight deck, damage radar arrays, or disable weapon systems. A $13 billion carrier crippled by $2 million worth of drones. The strategy extended beyond naval targets. Airbases, command centers, logistics hubs all became vulnerable to swarm attacks. Traditional air defenses were designed to engage a handful of high-value targets: aircraft, cruise missiles, ballistic missiles. They were never built to handle hundreds of small, slow-moving objects attacking from multiple directions simultaneously. Radar systems would be overwhelmed by the number of tracks. Fire control computers would struggle to prioritize threats. Human operators would freeze, unable to process the chaos unfolding on their screens. By 2020, China had fielded operational drone swarms with military units. The People's Liberation Army conducted exercises where swarms of 200 to 300 drones simulated attacks on mock air bases and fortified positions. The drones flew coordinated approach patterns, with some acting as decoys while others carried actual munitions. The results were devastating. In simulations, the swarms penetrated defenses that would have stopped conventional air attacks, proving that the concept worked not just in theory but in realistic operational scenarios. Chinese defense contractors began mass production. Factories in Shenzhen and Chengdu churned out drones at rates that alarmed Western intelligence agencies. Estimates suggested China could produce over 100,000 military-grade drones per year if production ramped to wartime levels. The economics were seductive. For the cost of a single J-20 stealth fighter, China could build 5,000 drones. Even with a 90% loss rate, the remaining 500 would still deliver mission effects at a fraction of the cost. Beijing exported the technology aggressively. Iran, Pakistan, and various Middle Eastern clients purchased Chinese drone swarms, using them in regional conflicts to devastating effect. In Yemen, Houthi rebels used Chinese-made drones to attack Saudi oil facilities, overwhelming point defenses and causing billions in damage. The attacks validated the swarm concept, proving that even relatively unsophisticated operators could employ the technology effectively. Western militaries scrambled for solutions. The U.S. Army tested everything from shotgun-equipped vehicles to net-launching systems, trying to find cost-effective ways to counter swarms. None of the solutions scaled. A soldier with a shotgun could shoot down maybe 1 or 2 drones before being overwhelmed. Net launchers worked in controlled tests but failed in realistic scenarios where the drones maneuvered and spread out. Electronic warfare systems could jam some drones, but the mesh network architecture meant others would simply route around the jammed nodes and continue the attack. The desperation was palpable. Defense officials testified before Congress, warning that the United States had no effective counter to mass drone attacks. War games consistently showed American forces suffering unacceptable losses to swarm tactics. One 2021 simulation, run at the Naval War College, depicted a Chinese assault on Taiwan where drone swarms disabled 40% of defending air defense systems in the opening hours, creating gaps that conventional forces exploited ruthlessly. Chinese strategists celebrated. Papers published in People's Liberation Army journals described swarm warfare as the great equalizer, a technology that neutralized American advantages in stealth, precision, and air superiority. One influential 2022 article argued that the United States had fallen into a trap, investing trillions in exquisite platforms like the F-35 and aircraft carriers, while China invested millions in expendable drones. The author compared it to the ancient Battle of Cannae, where Hannibal's numerically inferior force defeated Rome through superior tactics. China, he argued, was using swarms to achieve the same outcome. But the confidence was premature. While Beijing celebrated the swarm as unstoppable, American engineers at Raytheon, Lockheed Martin, and the Army's Rapid Capabilities and Critical Technologies Office were solving a problem Chinese planners had not anticipated. The problem was not how to shoot down every drone, it was how to make shooting down drones so cheap that the economics flipped entirely. And the answer was not kinetic, it was energy. Pure, concentrated, electromagnetic energy traveling at the speed of light. The Directed Energy Maneuver short-range air defense system mounted on a Stryker armored vehicle looks deceptively simple. A 50-kilowatt solid-state laser sits atop the turret, housed in a protective enclosure no larger than a small refrigerator. The weapon has no visible barrel, no ammunition feed, no smoke or flash when it fires. To an observer, it appears to do nothing, but in seconds, targets hundreds of meters away begin to smoke, twist, and fall from the sky. The laser operates in the near-infrared spectrum, invisible to the naked eye but devastating to anything it touches. The beam is focused to a spot roughly the size of a quarter at 500 meters, concentrating enough energy to melt through aluminum, plastic, and carbon fiber in seconds. When the laser locks onto a drone, it does not need to destroy it completely, it just needs to disable it. A few seconds of sustained energy burns through a rotor motor, warps a control surface, or ignites the battery. The drone loses control and crashes. The engagement is silent, instantaneous, and requires nothing more than electricity. The system was first tested in 2022 at White Sands Missile Range in New Mexico. The target array included a mix of commercial quadcopters, fixed-wing reconnaissance drones, and larger octocopters simulating loitering munitions. The test began with a single target, a DJI Phantom hovering at 300 meters. The laser slewed, locked, and fired. Within 3 seconds, smoke poured from the drone's body and it tumbled to the ground. The operators moved to the next target without pause, engaging and destroying 4 more drones in under a minute. The second test was more ambitious. 20 drones launched simultaneously from multiple directions, simulating a coordinated swarm attack. The DE M-SHORAD tracked them all, its radar and electro-optical sensors identifying threats and prioritizing based on range and approach vector. The laser engaged the closest targets first, moving smoothly from one to the next. Each engagement lasted 3 to 5 seconds. Within 2 minutes, all 20 drones were destroyed or disabled. The system had fired continuously without overheating, without reloading, and without missing a single target. The breakthrough was in thermal management and beam control. Earlier laser systems suffered from overheating after just a few shots, requiring long cooldown periods that made them impractical for combat. The DE M-SHORAD uses advanced cooling systems borrowed from industrial lasers, circulating coolant through the laser modules and dissipating heat through radiators mounted on the vehicle. The system can fire continuously for up to 10 minutes before needing a brief cooldown, and even then, the pause is measured in seconds, not hours. Beam control is managed by adaptive optics that compensate for atmospheric distortion in real time. Air turbulence, humidity, and temperature gradients all bend laser beams, reducing effectiveness at range. The DE M-SHORAD measures these distortions using a low-power pilot beam, then adjusts the main laser's optical path to counteract them. The result is a beam that stays focused and deadly even in less than ideal conditions. Rain and fog still degrade performance, but testing shows the system remains effective in all but the heaviest weather. The cost per kill is what makes the system revolutionary. Each engagement consumes roughly 10 kilowatt-hours of electricity, equivalent to running a household air conditioner for an hour. At standard generator fuel consumption rates, that translates to about 1 liter of diesel fuel, costing approximately $3. Compare that to a Stinger missile at $40,000 or a rolling airframe missile at $1 million, and the economic advantage is staggering. A single DE M-SHORAD vehicle can engage hundreds of drones for less than the cost of a single conventional intercept. The operational concept evolved rapidly. The Army deployed DE M-SHORAD systems to forward operating bases in Iraq and Syria, where Iranian-backed militias regularly attacked with swarms of small drones. In one engagement, a single system defended an airbase against 15 drones launched in a coordinated attack. The laser destroyed 14, and the 15th was engaged by conventional guns after it entered a smoke plume that obscured the laser's effectiveness. The base suffered no damage. The attackers lost $75,000 worth of drones. The defense cost less than $50 in fuel. Word spread quickly. Commanders who had watched their bases get harassed nightly by drones suddenly had a weapon that could operate continuously, engaging threats the moment they appeared on radar. The psychological impact was immediate. Drone operators, accustomed to attacking with impunity, found their aircraft burning out of the sky before reaching their targets. The attacks did not stop immediately, but their frequency dropped as operators realized the cost-benefit equation had inverted. The system's modularity allowed rapid scaling. The 50-kilowatt laser was just the beginning. Raytheon and Lockheed Martin developed 100-kilowatt and 300-kilowatt variants, capable of engaging larger drones, cruise missiles, and even mortar rounds in flight. The higher power systems drew more electricity, but the Stryker's onboard diesel generator could supply up to 150 kilowatts, enough to power the laser continuously with margin for other systems. Integration with existing air defense networks multiplied effectiveness. The DE M-SHORAD received targeting cues from Sentinel radars, counter-rocket, artillery, and mortar systems, and even satellite feeds. The laser could engage targets before its own sensors detected them, extending effective range and reducing reaction time. In a layered defense, long-range missiles handled high-altitude threats, medium-range systems engaged cruise missiles, and the laser swept up everything close in: drones, rockets, mortars, and loitering munitions. The first mass engagement came in early 2024 during an exercise at Fort Bliss, Texas. The scenario simulated a Chinese-style swarm attack. 300 drones launched from multiple vectors, approaching a simulated command post, defended by a single DE M-SHORAD platoon of 4 vehicles. The drones coordinated using mesh networking, spreading out to maximize coverage and minimize the effectiveness of aerial weapons. The laser systems activated simultaneously, each vehicle assigned a sector. For 12 minutes, the lasers fired continuously, slewing from target to target with mechanical precision. The results were devastating for the attackers. Of 300 drones, 287 were destroyed before reaching their targets. The remaining 13 penetrated the defense but were engaged by conventional systems. Not a single drone reached the command post. The 4 DE M-SHORAD vehicles had fired over 800 engagements, consuming roughly $2,400 in diesel fuel. The simulated cost to the attacker? Over $1.5 million in lost drones, with zero mission success. Chinese observers watching through intelligence channels saw their entire swarm strategy collapse in those 12 minutes. The weapon system they had dismissed as impractical, limited by weather and power requirements, had just demonstrated it could defeat a swarm that represented a significant fraction of a battalion-level attack, and it had done so at a cost so low that economic attrition no longer favored the offense. The implications rippled through People's Liberation Army planning documents. Internal assessments, later leaked to Western intelligence, revealed a strategic recalibration underway. The swarm tactics that seemed unstoppable now faced a counter that was cheaper, faster, and effectively unlimited in magazine depth: Chinese. Strategists began questioning whether the massive investment in drone production was strategically sound, or if they had built an entire doctrine around a capability that could be negated by a system costing a fraction of the offensive investment. Beijing's response was predictable but ineffective. Chinese engineers explored countermeasures, reflective coatings to deflect laser energy, ablative materials to shed heat, and rapid maneuvering to reduce beam dwell time. But every solution added weight, cost, and complexity. A $5,000 drone with laser-resistant armor became a $20,000 drone, undermining the entire economic advantage of swarm warfare. And even with upgrades, the drones still burned. They just took 7 seconds instead of 3. Against a laser with unlimited shots, the difference was academic. Other proposed tactics included overwhelming the laser with sheer volume, launching so many drones simultaneously that even a perfect engagement rate would be saturated. But the math did not work. A single DE M-SHORAD could engage 6 targets per minute, accounting for slew time and tracking. 4 vehicles working in coordination could handle 24 drones per minute, or Verstärktere 40 per hour. To overwhelm that defense, China would need to launch thousands of drones simultaneously, a logistical impossibility given the support infrastructure required for mass launch operations. The U.S. military accelerated deployment. By mid-2025, DE M-SHORAD systems were fielded to brigade combat teams across Europe, the Pacific, and the Middle East. Each brigade received 4 to 6 vehicles, creating overlapping defensive bubbles that protected high-value assets from drone attacks. The systems operated in concert with conventional air defense, creating a layered shield where lasers handled close-in threats and missiles engaged longer-range targets. Allied nations took notice. Germany, the United Kingdom, and Israel all requested technology transfers or joint development programs. The goal was to create a coalition capability where Allied forces could share targeting data and coordinate laser defenses across entire theaters. In a conflict scenario, that interoperability would allow one nation's radar to cue another nation's laser, maximizing coverage and ensuring no gaps existed for swarms to exploit. The economic revolution was complete. Defense, for the first time in decades, had become cheaper than offense. A $5 million DE M-SHORAD system could protect assets worth billions, engaging threats that cost thousands. The defender no longer had to choose which attacks to counter based on interceptor inventory. They could engage everything all the time for the cost of keeping a generator running. The psychological impact on adversaries extended beyond China. Non-state actors, militant groups, and rogue nations that had adopted drone swarms as their asymmetric weapon of choice suddenly faced a future where those attacks would fail at no cost to the defender. The technology that was supposed to level the playing field had been countered by a system that reinforced the advantage of technologically advanced militaries. One retired People's Liberation Army officer, speaking at a closed defense conference in Shanghai, admitted the obvious. He said, "We built a strategy around overwhelming American defenses with numbers, but we assumed those defenses would be kinetic. The laser changes everything. Our drones are not assets anymore. They are liabilities. Everyone we build is just more targets for a weapon that never runs out of ammunition." That candor was rare, and it signaled the depth of the strategic reassessment underway in Beijing. The transformation of directed energy from experimental curiosity to operational game-changer mirrored other American military innovations. The technology failed for years, plagued by power requirements and thermal issues. But incremental improvements, driven by patient engineering and lessons learned from every setback, eventually produced a system that worked. And when it worked, it did not just counter the threat, it obsoleted it entirely. Right now, DE M-SHORAD systems sit on bases across the world, their lasers charged and ready. The weapon that China mocked as vaporware has become the system that makes their swarm strategy irrelevant. The drones that were supposed to overwhelm American defenses through sheer numbers now burn and fall, destroyed for the cost of a latte. The trillion-yuan investment in autonomous swarms, built on the assumption that economics would always favor the attacker, has been rendered strategically worthless by physics and American persistence. The balance of power, built on cheap drones versus expensive interceptors, has been shattered by a beam of light that costs almost nothing to fire. When the technology matures at the right moment, yesterday's impossible becomes today's unstoppable. And the swarm that was supposed to blot out the sun just melted under a light far brighter than anything Beijing imagined. What do you think? Can China adapt its drone strategy, or has directed energy permanently ended the age of the swarm? Drop your thoughts below.